Thanks for tuning in to the 6-3 podcast. I'm your host, Joel, and my co-host, Ben. And this will be our last show for a hot minute, but we definitely wanted to get on and discuss the NFL draft. We put a lot of time and effort into previous podcasts with our rankings and mock drafts for the Lions in first round. So I think recapping it is the best way to finish before we take a little bit of a break. Um, yeah, so let's start with the Lions draft picks first before we go into several other rants about this draft. But um, pick 24 in round one, the Lions traded up from 29 to get Terrion Arnold, the corner from Alabama. And our position rankings, you did have him as your number 4 cornerback, but you like the pick, right?
I do like the pick. I think he fits the defense probably of the corners that I had in the top 6 or so. He's probably fits the Lions defense the best. Um, I don't like there's some question marks, I suppose, like long speed and certain things like that, but I think he fits the culture of the team exactly what you need. And in all reality, I mean, Brad Holmes talked about it. I mean, culture fits that's kind of almost be number one right now, especially with the kind of locker room that they already have. Um, and anybody that they're going to add needs to fit that. They're not going to take somebody that doesn't. So I think that's huge, and they know what they're doing. And it was a position of need. Obviously, we'll talk about they filled it again later. So it was a good pick.
Yeah, so I mean, right from the top down, I ranked Terrion Arnold as my number 2 corner. Isaiah had him as 3. You had him at 4. But
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, like that's what we're looking at as a Lion from a Lions perspective is who fits. Now, the
Yep.
only knock is I still don't give this an A or an even A minus. I give this pick a B plus. I don't know
Mhm.
where your grade lands on this. And I think it's because just draft capital, like giving up a valuable day 2
Yeah.
pick. Is he that much more worth it to you than another guy that still feels like a culture fit, like Cooper DeJean? Or
Sure.
even if you really felt, and I'm not big on Kool-Aid, but Kool-Aid was also there. Nate Wiggins was also there at 30. Nate Wiggins is as talented as it comes to. So it's like, was it worth moving up to 24 and taking away a very valuable uh second day 2 pick? So I think that's for me why I knock it down because who knows who that
Yeah.
is. Granted, with his day 2 picks, he probably that's where a lot of people had the most criticism of Brad Holmes.
Mhm.
So who knows anyway? Brad Holmes is going to do what Brad Holmes wants to do.
Yeah, I think they just identified Arnold pretty early. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you necessarily. I'd probably have it like a B plus, something like that. Um, I, I mean, I mean, if he dominates and is like all rookie, then you can move it to an A. Um, but I think they just identified him as their number one target from the beginning, and then they kind of, I think they probably thought they waited as long as they could, right, to make sure they still got him, right, and I think
Mm.
they just did not feel comfortable waiting until 29, because they felt like somebody else is going to take him. I mean, that's obviously what happened, right? And I'm sort of surprised he was even there that long. I'll be honest. So, I thought he was going to go a little
Well, I
sooner.
mean, yeah, Quinion Mitchell even fell a little bit, right? So,
Yeah. So, well, and I think the run on QBs is obviously a part of it. We knew that was going to happen. It happened even worse than we thought it might happen, but um, you know, I can talk about Sean Payton later too. That was a stupid press conference later too. So
yeah, we'll get to our rants after we cover the
that was
lines. But
stupid.
they doubled up at corner there at
Yep.
61 in the second round with Ennis
Yep.
Rakestraw, who I had out of Missouri. I had him as my number 7 corner in the
Yep.
class, which is it's still not bad. But again, they feel like maybe they've evaluated him. I think they're just guys there like Cooper Beebe that I kind of really wanted to address the interior line, and I'm really pretty high on Cooper Beebe.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Rakestraw from the sounds of what a lot of people are talking about is they feel like he's also a versatile cornerback where they can put him outside, inside, and even at safety box if they need to.
Mm-hmm.
So because he's a willing tackler, right?
Yep.
So he may not be your perfect coverage guy. I think Terrion actually has so much potential as a. I think he's very sticky with his receivers,
Mm-hmm.
but he's more quick than fast. None of these guys also had outstanding 40s. They ran in the 4.5s.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you just have to look at game speed and attitude and motor, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe again Rakestraw fits that. I didn't see a lot of character flaws with Rakestraw either, as far as I've seen on him. Again, I didn't interview him, but like as far as I can tell, a
Well,
lot of people
did
thought
he
really
he
highly of him.
even yeah, he even came off as like not disappointed that he got drafted by the Lions. He was super excited, but he came off as like, I'm going to show everybody that I was more valuable than, obviously super
Amon
happy.
Ra chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, yeah, like and that I can appreciate some of that, right? Especially as a corner and receiver, like those two positions, like you're kind of out there by yourself. Like that's that's perfect attitude to have as that type of position. And I do think he is faster than his 40. He ran it probably at 85%. So I think there's a little more juice in there. And yeah, willing tackler, like you said, I think that's huge. In Glenn's defense, these guys got to tackle, and we saw at times last year. Kindle Vildor. That's the only reason Kindle Vildor could be on the field is because he could tackle. That's all he could do. But that's the only.
He's
We're
pretty
not
good
going
at tipping balls in the receiver's hands.
yeah, yeah. I think Holmes and Campbell and everybody kind of involved looked at it and said, look, we're not going to lose a big game again because we don't have enough depth at corner because we're playing guys that just really probably belong on the practice squad and or as you're, super deep, down the depth chart at corner. We aren't going to do that again. And, doubling up while, you can scratch your head about it a little bit. I felt like I still like the pick. Do I give it an A? No, but I think I give them both B pluses. I don't, I'm not gonna.
I was actually going to follow up with you. I'm like, I want to get your Terrion grade too, but yeah, and I gave Terrion a B plus, but I think that's because I think he's a valuable corner. The draft capital is really the biggest knock for me. With this one though, they don't move up. This is where they were designated to
Yep.
pick from the start at
Yep.
61. The concern with doubling up at corner, and despite me still thinking he's a top seven corner in my position rankings, um, is we traded a valuable third round pick for Carlton Davis.
Hmm.
Um, and now it looks like a 1 year rental for a third round pick, which is, in my opinion, that's crappy. It's crappy.
Yeah. Possibly. I think Davis is more insurance in case one of these guys gets hurt and or uh, takes a little longer, right?
Yeah, and
So
veteran leadership is still
veteran
nice.
leadership, you need, I mean, I just think they looked at it and said that will not happen again next year. And they're also looking at it as like we could win the Super Bowl next year. So we're not going to let this happen, right?
So
Let's
yeah, so let's address the one position that felt like is the reason we're not in Super Bowl last year.
exactly. I mean, in all reality, I know that's not, I mean,
I mean,
Josh Rosen,
it's a team
all
game, right?
it's a
But
team
yeah,
game. There's a lot of things you could point to in that game, but that is that position had a 70% of the problem in that
that
game.
position faltered in that second half of that game for sure.
Correct. And in
Um,
all reality, if you look at it in bigger scope, like it struggled all year. I mean, it was not a good position at
After
all.
week 6, yeah, I mean, when Cam Sutton started to suck, it was the whole entire liability.
Right. I mean, they weren't good. So, Mosley gets hurt again, right? And it's like
Mhm.
we just can't.
Branch even missed a few games too.
Branch missed a few games, right? I mean, he was great all year, but like you can't. You have to. What I do appreciate is they got two guys that Brian Branch is more versatile, I think. And he's obviously more of a safety, right? But two guys that still kind of embody the same Brian Branch-esque like versatility, hitting, that type of game. And I think if you fill your defensive backfield with guys like that, they're just playmakers, right? They make plays. And I think that is the idea. And I think that's what Aaron Glenn wants. And I think that's what Campbell wants. And that's what they did. So I can't knock the pick. I do understand that part of me was like, we have some other needs, but I think they feel like they can address them elsewhere and or they have enough depth at least for this year. Long term, they're going to need to start addressing some of those other needs here in future drafts here coming up. But I think for this year, they're trying to win the Super Bowl. It's quite obvious what they're trying to do right now.
I think for me on this one, I'm kind of teetering between a C plus and a B minus on this grade, but I'm going to say that there is value at this pick. I mean, basically it's my position rankings. I mean, the seventh best corner. I also
Yeah,
had him ranked overall 39th, and he went 61st.
yeah,
So there's
huge value.
positional value there for sure.
Huge
You
value.
you took best player available, and still a position that it's like, all right, yeah, you could use more and more help on that. That was major
Yep.
liability.
Yep. Because think
I
about it, if
think
one of those guys goes down, it's like, oh, but now you drafted two solid guys. It's like, okay, now if one guy goes down, we're okay.
I think the biggest knock for me, the reason I'm going to put it probably at like a low B minus, is because it makes Carlton Davis not look as valuable anymore, at least long term. It looks like a rental. And then on top of that, just doubling up when I feel like I really like it. I feel like I really wanted to address interior line with Cooper Beebe. I just feel like there are other options there. So I think that's kind of why I'm going to knock on it the most. I'm not big on doubling up. Even when they did that with the defensive tackles, obviously when Wuzurika didn't work out, but Aleem McNeil did. So
Mhm.
maybe if one of them works out, you're still like, sweet. But
Yep.
yeah, moving on a little bit here to the fourth round at 126. They traded obviously away their third round pick, but they get Giovanni Manu, an offensive tackle from the University of British Columbia, which I think was the very first draft pick from BC ever. And they
Mhm.
actually had two players go. The other offensive lineman, Theo Benedette, went to the Bears as an undrafted free agent, I believe. So,
Yep.
um,
So they've
so
had some guys in the league, but
they're blowing up the offensive line. They get some big dudes that are athletic. And I
hmm
think that's what Giovanni Manu stands out for. And so for me, he was one of my lowest ranked drafted players.
hmm
But that's because I felt like he was a hardcore sleeper. I actually thought he could have been a seventh round pick as a steal.
yeah.
Um, I had him as a seventh round grade, and I thought he would be an incredible steal.
Mhm.
Because yeah, I mean the same reason a lot of scouts and analysts are saying he could be Jordan Mailata. And if you look at who was picking right after the Lions, the Eagles,
hmm
and the Eagles traded back right after that. They're like, all right, interesting. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not,
I
but
wouldn't be
what they've done
surprised
with
if they
what they've
picked
done with
up a
Mailata is like
yeah.
maybe that's why Holmes is like, I bet it's in their brain. He may
Yep.
have some intel on it that we don't know, but
Yep.
a super athletic dude, 6'7", 350 plus, and he ran like a 5 second 40, maybe even a little faster than that. So,
Yeah.
super athletic, almost unheard of for someone 350 to run that fast.
hmm
I just think he's going to be very raw. But again, he is technically a fourth round pick. They traded out of the third round. So it's like I expect all day one and day two players to consider starting.
hmm
This guy can be a project. He gets away with it because he falls right into the fourth round. So
Yep.
if they can groom him by the time Decker's done,
hmm
or even if they see there's potential for him to move inside, 6'7" is very tall to play inside. But
Probably too tall, but yeah.
yeah, but I mean, there's options there, right?
Yep. And
He's a project.
I think with this one, I mean, you notice they do take these projects they've taken one of these guys quite a bit in almost every draft with Holmes. If they work out, cool. And if not, I mean, does it crush you? No. I mean, it crushes you less, like you said, if he's a seventh round pick, but there might have been some intel. These guys salivate over a guy like this, right? Like 6'7", 352. If they get that guy in the fourth round and he blows up, they look like geniuses, right? They can always point to that and be like, look at this guy, look what I found, right? Out of British Columbia, right? So I think it's yeah, I like the pick from the terms of like I can see where the thought process was, and I can also see, where this could go. I don't necessarily love the positional value, but also thinking back to what was around at that point, I don't really hate it. I don't, it's
I
not
mean,
it would
Jaden Hicks was available, but are you really going to go three
yeah,
secondary guys in a
yeah, you're
row?
not going to go three secondary guys, at least not there. Maybe you could take another one in the seventh round or something, but I don't know. I think uh yeah, I mean I like it. Is it an A? No. Is it a B plus? No. It's probably like a C plus for me. Maybe a C, but it's not that's not knocking him. That's not even really knocking the pick. It's just you have drafted some other guy that maybe was had a higher floor, sure, but he might have had the highest ceiling of anybody left on the board at that point. This wasn't a crazy deep draft overall. Like once you got through the third round, even like mid second, like it was a pretty steep fall off. Doesn't mean there's not some diamonds in the rough or some gems that they're gonna find that I'm sure other teams are gonna find some great players late, but um it was not a super deep draft, especially when it comes to like defensive line, offensive line. It wasn't the best draft in the world. So
And I'm also in the C. I'm going to give it a C minus actually. And again, I think that's also it's not necessarily it's the potential is there,
yeah, well,
and
potential is an A, but it's just
I love the athletic ability, but they also traded up again for this pick, and it was
mhm.
another and they traded next year's third rounder for
Yep,
this, and I was
yep,
like, what are you doing?
yep.
Like, it doesn't hurt if Aaron Glenn gets a job because then you get the third round pick for the affirmative action stuff,
And
but
he
it
probably will if he has a good year, if we're being honest. But
yeah, because he's been interviewed the last 2 years before this, so
Right.
His time is coming, I think, if they have another good year. But that's the biggest knocks for me. It's a C minus and maybe again low C minus.
Yep.
The other questionable pick that came up was announced as a running back, but I had him positionally valued as a safety, and that's Sione Vaki,
Yep.
safety slash running back from Utah. And I wasn't super low on him. He was in my top 190, I think. I think he's probably in the
He's a
180s for
really
me.
good football player. Like,
Yeah,
what
athletic.
position does he have? Like, I just don't know what
Athletic. He's
position.
got a motor. He works hard. There's a lot of things to like about him. Another really good character value. I
Yep.
love that. I obviously Holmes has like a fascination with the Tongan guys, the Samoan dudes.
Yeah.
Like he loves his polys, dude.
Uh-huh.
So I think from that perspective, Baki's just another one of those guys. But almost every one of those guys proves to have a motor. They work hard. They're none of those guys are lazy. They've come from a culture of work ethic.
Mhm.
Um, and so it'll be interesting to see how they use him. But I think positionally value, he's going to be a special teams freak. And I think there's potential there as even like in the new kick return style game that they're going to operate on. I think he fits that mold pretty well too.
Yep.
And again, having a guy like Godwin Eagle BK, that's a perfect comp for me because Godwin was started out as a safety too, converted to running back.
Mhm.
Um, and
He was
he was
good
a
on
special
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 teams.
teams. He was very good at
Yeah.
special teams.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
I
and
don't
in the
hate it.
fourth round, it's like, do you hate it? No, not really.
I don't hate it. Was it my favorite pick? No. Just because you sit there and you scratch your head because you don't know where he's going to slot
I
in,
know if you want to
really.
go in another corner, Chris Abrams' drain was on the board.
Yeah,
You want to go to
it's
the
like
another Missouri
exactly.
corner?
And that might be what they're looking at. They're going, look, if we go best player available, it's probably another corner. We can't do that, right? That makes no sense, right? So what do we do? Let's find the best football player, right? And it sounds like when he visited the Lions, he met with all the offensive coaches, um, which is interesting. I didn't hate him as a running back. I thought he was a good, solid running back. I just think, I mean, obviously,
It was
he's
like
just
the
not.
other undrafted guy. They got another undrafted guy too, Steel Chambers, that played running back pretty well for Ohio State for a couple
Yeah,
games.
yeah. I just don't. Neither would play run. I mean, the running back position is full for the Lions, right? So
Yeah.
it's just interesting. I mean, you could see it maybe, down the line a year or two if he's still around, and maybe finds a role in special teams where maybe he could become a third running back on the team, right? I mean, that is possible. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. Again, when you get to that point in the fourth round, you're just looking for good football players, and they got a good football player. So I don't. I mean, I'll give it a B minus at that point.
I'll give it a C. Um, Yeah, I mean it is interesting because I guess it's also uncharted territory, even
Mhm.
from a Lions fan perspective, that they don't have to get these guys that have to start. Like they need to hit on diamonds, They don't need that anymore. They need depth, they need quality players with good morale,
Yep.
incredible work ethic, and willing to
Yep.
do whatever they need.
Mhm.
And that this type of guy is fit. So I think for me, just looking at it now, it's like it is an adjustment period for many fans that have been used to
Yep.
needing play like five players to start every draft.
Right.
So, um, all right, going into the sixth round at 189, I felt like they got a really great value pick on this, and that was Mekhi Wingo, a defensive
Yes.
tackle from LSU. So he's a bit of a tweener, in my
Mhm.
opinion. He's a little small. He's 6 foot 285. So it's
Mhm.
very small for a defensive tackle. But again, he also ran a 4.8-ish 40, which
Yep.
isn't bad. It's pretty strong. I think 25 plus reps. Um, I had him ranked pretty high too. I think I had him in the 115s
Mhm.
area, and he fell all the way to 189. So really great value pick. And I think there's a lot of potential there. I'd give this one, I'm gonna give it an A minus.
Yeah. I'll give it a B plus. Um, I've pushed maybe A minus. I don't know. It's somewhere in between there. Um, they this was a value pick for sure. I like the pass rush value that he brings on the interior. I think that's always great to add, especially you can add it that late. I think they were probably kind of surprised he was still there for him. So I think it was kind of a no-brainer at that point. So that was from a value standpoint, that was really, really good. And then you drafted him that late. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like, you know what I mean? Like again, we're in the situation like you just mentioned, where it I mean, does it matter? Yes, it always matters when you spend valuable time and resources on a player and you're paying him, blah blah blah. But like if he doesn't work out because of whatever, right? because he's undersized or because he's just kind of a tweener. Okay. Like, I mean, it's not going to crush the team. You know what I mean? It's not going to, you're not relying on some of these fourth, fifth round picks to be guys, right? If they
I
end up
mean,
great. So,
right on face value though, like he was ranked and all the big boards that I went through, every single one, all 35 big boards that I went through that are reputable. The worst rank that he was on was ESPN had him at 189, but he went as high on one big board as, let's see, so the 33rd team had him 39th.
yeah, which is
So
that's
there's a
high.
ceiling there. There's a
There
ceiling.
is. There is. And I think early on draft boards, I think he was higher.
I've had him
Um,
at 65. So again, that's still very high.
yeah, I mean, I think from a value standpoint, this is probably their best like pick when it comes to if you just look
They're
at
going
who
to say
does
their next one is. I was
that.
blown away by their next one. And you
Yeah, the
should be
next one
too. I
is
mean, given the fact that their next pick, you actually ranked fourth as an interior line.
yeah, yeah.
And that'll be a perfect segue into Christian Mahogany, the guard taken out of Boston College in the sixth round, 210th overall.
I
Uh,
cannot believe he was still there. I just
I
don't understand.
can't. He was the best available on my list too, and I was like, "Oh, we got him." Like a lot of times, it just feels like it's redemption for picks like Vaki and Manu that you just
Yeah,
scratch your head. But
yeah.
it's like, you know what? That you're redeeming yourself. If you like, again, it's almost like some of the other drafts where it's like, if you just reorder these picks, like even if you
Well,
go,
great. Yeah,
if you even go Terrion, Rakestraw, Mahogany,
Mahogany. Yeah,
Wingo, Manu, and then Vaki or Vaki and the Manu even, like
yeah.
it's like that. It's fine. It's great.
That looks great. That
That's how
looks
you
like
write
you
it
did
up.
everything, but for whatever reason, they felt like they couldn't wait to get Manu and they couldn't wait to get Vaki. And they obviously wanted him, right? Especially, I mean, they traded up for Manu. For whatever reason, they felt like they wouldn't stick around. So I don't know. I mean, they know more than us. Obviously, they're privy to way more knowledge about like the behind the scenes stuff. But you're right. I mean, there's been other draft picks just like that too, where it's like, just like move these guys around a little bit and like you got great value. But if you think about that, like that probably means that all the players that they're picking are, I mean, they've had some great drafts. Like they really haven't missed on much. Like a couple late picks. I mean, on Wuzurike wasn't great, but like
I
beyond
think
that,
2 years ago, I would have been pounding fist mad about Manu, but
yeah.
like Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have given us nothing to complain about. Look at where they've brought us.
I
We
mean,
were a game away from the
I
Super Bowl.
hated the Sorsdal pick, and he ended up playing. And while he was bad, he still played and started some games. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
while he was bad, like he was still there and was valuable.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
he's from William and Mary, for
Exactly,
God's sakes. Like, it's
exactly.
like,
So I can't really knock the Manu pick if that's they turned him into like a semi-playable. I mean, he was almost unplayable if we're being honest, but semi-playable offensive
I have
lineman.
found other cast-offs. I remember the Eagles practice squad cast-off, Coyote Alshika, right? And he was competent, right? He was a cast-off.
More than
So,
competent. He was
yeah.
solid. So.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting going into this year. And I think they have the depth, right? They have the start. I mean, Zeitler can start right away, but then
Mhm,
again, I feel like there's competent depth,
mhm.
and I think that's something you got to feel
I
pretty good
and
about.
I think that's why they didn't feel like they had to address it early.
Maybe I
Because
just,
this
with
year they feel
Ragnow
good about it.
living with chronic foot injuries, it's like, oh
Well, I
God,
think
it's
he's
like you
just
never
gonna
know.
take a lot of drugs before every game this year and then retire after they win the
Yeah.
Super Bowl. Is his idea. So
Well, I'm going to give the Mahogany pick a straight A.
yeah,
But
that's an A. It's an A.
yeah, I mean, you had him ranked fourth. I had him ranked sixth. Isaiah had him fifth.
Hmm.
For interior line, very high on him. And yeah, it's really putting it in perspective. We just reorder it, and it looks
Hmm.
great.
Hmm.
So, but let's now talk about some of the question marks and some of the really great things about the draft. And I think let's start with the obvious question mark, and that was happened at eighth overall, and it kind of started at seventh overall. And J.C. Latham, we felt like went a little bit early.
Beach.
Everything else was chalk. 1 through 6, chalk. I
Yep.
think anybody with a brain
I mean,
probably really wanted to think,
the only question mark was do the Chargers trade out? Do
yeah.
the Cardinals trade out? That was a possibility. Didn't really
Yeah,
think that was going to happen. The
without
Chargers, I thought
trades,
was going to happen.
I didn't do trades in my mind, but I had them pick Joe All if they stayed where they were.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
felt like
And then
it was pretty chalk.
and then do the Giants feel like they need to get a quarterback? Right.
Mhm.
That was the difference. The only question mark, I guess, right there.
Well, let's talk about number 8 then, Michael Penix. The losing quarterback in the national championship. The next Michael in Atlanta that's left-handed. I bet dogs are freaking out right now.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I mean, Raheem Morris, Arthur Blank, everyone, the GM, they all tried to like Terry Fontenot, right? They all tried to like defend this pick here, and I was stunned. And
I
you had I was that was before I decided to start spoiling picks myself. So I saw your text. I was like, what did they do? And I was like,
it was no see like I didn't say what happened, but nobody could have like if you were just reading that, nobody could have thought that that's what they did. Like you thought maybe they'd reach on like some offensive lineman or something. Like that was stupid. No, that was incredibly stupid. That's like an all-timer right there. I mean, maybe it works out, but I don't see how.
yeah, I don't actually. He has to be Patrick Mahomes after 4 years at the age of 28, basically. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like if you signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year deal, by the time that 4-year deal is up, Penix is 28, going towards 29.
Yep.
And
So even if he's
maybe he's got
good,
no tread on the tires at that point. His body's had time to recuperate and stay
I guess
healthy, no more injuries, all right? But like,
they've set themselves up for a situation where Kirk Cousins feels like he's got to look over his shoulder, even if he really doesn't, right? And I'm not saying Kirk Cousins can't handle that. He certainly he probably can. He's a pro. He's a veteran. Whatever. And I'm not like it's not like I'm the biggest Kirk Cousins
a
fan in the world.
character, I'm big on his character as a person.
But
He's the
and
best.
he's a good dude. He seems like a really good dude, right?
Mhm.
I'm not I just don't understand. Like you signed him like to be your guy, right? And now you're like I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen anything like
And
that,
we
right?
talked about it. They didn't do any visit because the specs on that with the
Correct.
entire NFL, with the team organization. It's like, how does this look that you just paid this guy all this money? So they didn't even bring him in for a visit. They just decided to make that call to Kirk Cousins on the pick and say, "Hey, we're about to pick
Like two
Penix."
or 3 minutes before the pick went
Yeah,
down, which
I'm
is
like, that's
literally insane.
Bush League,
That is
dude.
Bush, right? And if I'm Kirk Cousins, I'm frustrated, right? Doesn't mean I'm not gonna, go out there and play my best or whatever, but I'm frustrated because to me that's just mixed signals that you're receiving from the team that signed you, and it makes no sense.
What is the possible? I mean, the other perspective, you try to put yourself in their shoes, and I think even in this, it's like you're really fishing to like try to side with them. But I mean, do they feel like they aren't going to be picking this high again, right? So you feel like if you really like this guy, you take him now, and then you just
I
develop
don't
him the
care.
way Patrick Mahomes
If
developed
you
and Jordan
actually
Love.
have a plan on how to be better in the next 4 years, right? Because that's the term of Kirk's contract, right? And let's even cut off a year, right? Because maybe he's bad for a year, or maybe he just is getting
Yeah,
too
maybe
old.
Father Time does finally kick in,
Yeah,
right?
exactly, right? So 3 years, right? Why would you not take a top 10 level prospect that's not a quarterback to make your team better? That makes absolutely no sense. I don't even care what position they pick other than that position, right? It doesn't matter. Like
I
I
felt honestly, I was like, I've like this is Dallas Turner. I was pretty convinced they're going the first defensive
convinced it was
player
going to be Dallas Turner. I thought Dallas Turner,
edge. I was like,
their defense sucks. It's
uh-huh,
not good. It's
uh-huh.
horrible, in fact.
I was
So
100% sure it was defense. I was like, it's got to
if
be.
they
I
picked
was
Dallas
like,
Turner, that would have I
I
probably would
might
have
have
given
mortgaged my
hey,
house on the
I would
fact
have
that it was
given
defense.
I would have given them an A if they picked Dallas Turner. That would have been a great pick. That would have been a great pick right there, right? It would have been
But
chalk for the
but
most part.
Atlanta
But
has this thing where they like to draft first round picks and not use them, right? I mean,
I,
we talk about
yep,
Kyle Pitts and Drake
yeah.
London, Bijan Robinson, and now Michael Penix. It's
He's literally you're gonna waste an eighth overall pick for him to sit on the bench, right? And it does
for
happen
at
with
least 3 years, probably.
right. Not even like sit on the bench for like 6 games while you get him ready or anything. No, he's sitting on the bench for multiple years, right? And
And
maybe
already being, I
term,
think, is he older than Bo Nix? He's already the oldest quarterback in his class. I don't know.
I
They're
think he
both
is
old,
older than
but
Bo Nix, or it's close. So yeah, I don't know.
we could talk
Stupid.
about that as another segue, right? The other head scratcher, Bo Nix. I mean, you predicted it, and I ended up predicting it too because I'm like, what? That makes a lot of sense. He's going to do that. So I made that also in my mock draft. But Bo Nix to the Denver Broncos.
I predicted it. I didn't say I liked it, but I predicted it. So
Well, Sean
I
Payton's
just
kind of
felt
just
I just felt like Sean Payton was going to take a quarterback no matter what, and I felt like he was going to be the only guy left. I actually thought Michael Penix was going to be there, but I didn't think he fit at all what Sean Payton tries to do. Michael Penix is a downfield thrower. He throws into deep windows downfield. That's just not he's not a timing guy, right? That's not what he is. Bo Nix is to an extent, and he could thrive under this offense. I could see it, so I can project that. But um, I thought Sean Payton's press conference was just stupid. He was just acting like he was the mastermind behind the whole first 20 picks of the draft and how he was fainting, faking how he was going to move up in the draft to get the Vikings to trade up a one spot or whatever. I'm like, dude, like you were okay. You could have drafted Bo Nix in the second round, dude. Like, good for you. Like, you didn't really accomplish anything there, buddy. So I don't know. I think they would have taken JJ McCarthy had he fallen to him.
Yeah, I didn't see any way he was going to get that far, though. I thought that was the lowest he'd go.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
but I do want to talk about just teams that you felt like drafted really well. First off, who jumps out in your brain as having a really solid draft? I mean,
Um,
and where would you rank the Lions out of the 32 teams?
the Bears had a good draft. I know it's easy to say, but I thought they had a good draft anyway. I mean, I think
They
that
had 5 picks, and I felt like even drafting a punter fourth out of five. I was like, that's the best special teams player in this draft.
special teams player in the draft, and they need one.
Yeah.
So it's a position of need. So I had no problems there. I thought they were good. I thought the I thought the Vikings had a great draft. I mean, to get JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner, like like, did you see how shocked Kevin O'Connell was when they were like, "Hey, we're getting Dallas Turner"? He goes, "Really?" Like he was blown away by that. Like that was pretty good. And I
The
think
the
JJ
chips
McCarthy,
definitely fell where they needed them. That's for
correct.
sure.
And I think JJ McCarthy was their best, probably the best fit for them. I Let me think. I mean,
The
the
other
Lions wise, I think the Lions are somewhere in the middle. I loved some of their stuff. I would probably put them like 14th, maybe 13th. I could see going a little higher, maybe even two. I thought the Commanders were really good as well. Um,
So the Steelers actually really jump out at me.
Steelers were good.
I mean, they got Fountain, then they get Zach Frazier in the interior. So they go back to back interior, but like they needed O-line help. Then on
Mhm.
top of that, they also get Mason McCormick out of South Dakota State, who I think has tons of upside as well in the interior. And then they get Roman Wilson, they get Peyton Wilson, and then they get Logan Lee out of Iowa, who I also think has a ceiling. I think Logan Lee's a little bit of slept on too.
I think
So
I think Peyton Wilson fits their scheme perfectly. It's just whether or not he can continue to play without an ACL. So we'll see about that
I
one.
think I spent this draft also being like, how did the Eagles keep getting away with this? Like the
Right?
Eagles also had really solid draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm trying to look at their class here. Yeah, they started the cornerback thing with Quinyon Mitchell. So they get Quinyon, but then they also get Cooper DeJean. So
Crazy.
they loaded up there. We thought Rakestraw and Terrion's good. I think Quinyon and DeJean are better. So
Yep.
you get that. And then I also, a guy that I was really high on out of Houston Baptist, Jalix Hunt, an edge rusher from there. They get Will Shipley all the way at 127. I think Will Shipley could be
Solid.
yeah, I think he's a sleeper. Jeremiah Trotter fell all the way to 155. Fits perfect. His dad was also an Eagle. What a great pick. It's like they get Trevor Keegan, who I
Yep.
actually think Trevor Keegan was slept on
I
in
do
this
too.
situation. Another slept on guy, Johnny Wilson. He's got the big playability.
Huge. He's
Um,
super tall.
so yeah, that draft to me loaded.
I thought the
And
Chiefs
then
had a good draft too.
the Chiefs, yeah,
Yep. I thought they were solid.
Chiefs. And then I also was looking at, I mean, I know it doesn't mean as much, but like I went through each team's undrafted free agents and went through all my rankings that I had for each one of them. And I thought the Jets had the best undrafted free agent group.
Hmm.
Um, Loaded. And I mean, they just had tons of guys that like they got Leonard Taylor the third, right? Undrafted. That
Hmm.
starts it right out. He was my best, highest ranked player that didn't get drafted.
Yeah.
And then they later, like right after that, they get and where am I seeing this? They get Braden McGregor.
Hmm.
Uh, they got Eric Watts out of Connecticut. Um, and I feel like they had one other big one that was like, wow, these guys just where are they getting all these why are they wanting to sign to the Jets? But um no, I mean I want to go back to the Commanders here. I ranked the Commanders in the top 10 for undrafted free agents, and I also ranked them in the top 5 for draft.
overall
I mean,
draft.
they get
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels, obviously, that's all good and fine. But then they also get Jurjon Newton. Um,
Yep.
they
That
get
was
Mike Sainer still.
yep.
Um,
Huge.
Ben Sinnott.
Luke
That's
McCaffrey.
yeah, yeah. They got Luke McCaffrey. They got Brandon Coleman. Jordan McGee. I saw him flying up draft boards in the last couple weeks. And then I also Notre Dame's edge, Javante John Baptiste. Like he has shown flat when I've caught a couple, NBC Notre Dame games. I just felt like he was effective. I'm not saying he was a superstar. I just thought he was effective.
I think he was
And
solid.
so
I thought Jim Harbaugh had a good first draft too.
yeah. And it
Cardinals.
was and of course, I mean everybody knew he was going to draft two, at least two, right? And then he had to get Carson Barnhart
But
later
I
as undrafted.
but I thought okay, so I thought going alt makes perfect sense. Obviously, that's easy. That was an easy one. But getting Junior Colson at the time they got him was perfect, right? Um, I didn't love their fourth round pick. Uh, Ibo eBay, I didn't love that because he's pretty good against the run, but it's a little high for him. But other than that, I mean, Lad McConkey too. Lad McConkey flew up the draft boards. That's
It was
a
interesting seeing Jim Harbaugh's. He was going after his guys, but he was also going after teams that he's seen recently in big
correct.
games.
Correct. Yes. I mean, he knows, right? I feel like he took guys that he thought were like just in pot like tough to play against himself, right? So that's why
Mhm.
that makes sense there. He's great against the run, and they had trouble stopping the run, so I get that pick. So
And of course, he was going to get two Catholic guys out of Notre Dame, right? He's
have to,
Catholic himself. It had to
have to,
happen.
right? Had to happen. So
So if he's not going to draft an Alabama, Georgia, or Michigan guy, it's Notre Dame.
yes, exactly,
That was chalk, right? I mean,
exactly.
um, so yeah, man. I don't think I have a whole lot more I wanted to cover on that, but it was
No,
uh it was fun doing this year's draft again with you. And
yeah,
obviously this is even if the podcast doesn't continue, I feel like at some point it'll be nice to just come on and log our thoughts about the draft.
yeah.
Even if it's not like an every week
Talking
thing.
about it for 45 minutes or an hour, it's good. And it's
But I don't anticipate the next time we go, I mean, we could be off a good 1 to 2 months here. So I'm
yeah,
thinking,
get a midseason baseball one somewhere in there.
yeah,
Probably.
midseason baseball. And I don't know if that's kind of when position rankings start too for the NFL.
Yep.
Um, and
Yep.
then, the NFL preview show and Michigan preview. So like, other than that, like, I think we have till those points.
Yeah.
Midseason baseball comes in
Anything
July.
crazy happens that we're like, yo, we have to talk about this, we can. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I
I
think,
mean,
yeah, we could be looking at end of June at the earliest. So we have at least a whole month and a half, at least, and maybe 2 months.
yep.
So
We'll see.
well,
Yep.
enjoy it. Enjoy the hiatus. I know I will. It's kind of nice not to have to prep for all this every once in a while. But
Sure.
yeah, man, it was good. And we will be in touch.
See ya.